Vice Chancellor for Faculty Diversity and Inclusion. I am here with AVC Palmer this morning with academic personnel, and we are going to be discussing the COVID impact statement. Many universities, as you probably are well aware from colleagues, are strongly encouraging their faculty to develop a COVID impact statement to go along with their merit and promotion file. And our academic personnel office has launched a website recently, which we'll go over in a moment. But what this talk will cover will describing the statement on the impact of the COVID in the promotion and tenure file. We're going to try and explain components of the newly launched AP website, explaining the COVID impact statement, which is fantastic. It was launched over a week ago. And then there's also an FAQ on the COVID impact statement to assist faculty, right? So they can determine whether or not to submit one, what to include in their file. And it's not required as part of the formal review process, I wanted to note, but it's really encouraged. And so I think this is the way the campus is going. And so we wanted to be able to answer any of those questions. So what is a COVID impact statement? The statement on the impact of COVID is a practice that many universities, as I mentioned, are engaging in to allow faculty to really describe their achievement relative to opportunity during the COVID pandemic. It's also an opportunity to document how your teaching, research, and service has been impacted by the pandemic and what you've done to respond to such challenges. So from APS's website, which Cindy will actually physically show you in a moment, is that a COVID impact statement is a document in which a candidate describes the ways in which the pandemic has affected both positively and negatively their effectiveness and productivity. So again, this really specific language is in the new website, and I just wanted to pull a few out for this presentation. Why write a COVID impact statement? I'm getting this question from a few faculty now, and these are a few points I wanted to transmit to you all, and that is that it helps your review committee, it helps external reviewers and voting faculty really in your department understand your research efforts as well as challenges during COVID. For example, many journals had delays. Many reviewers were unable to review. They declined reviewing articles, and so we've seen a backlog in particular journals. Some journals have actually noted that they're not taking submissions at this moment. So it's really important to note the context for which you're conducting your research and also having your articles under review, as well as teaching, of course, how you have responded to the pandemic, what types of professional development you have engaged in, for example, with the Teaching and Learning Commons. So again, it just really helps to document the process that you underwent to respond to COVID, as well as, of course, adhere to your professional career. It serves as a documentation of your experience as a scholar during the pandemic. I mean, that's probably number one, is what was your experience like during this pandemic in all of the areas that matter. Again, this is in an effort to provide a full view of your efforts to overcome those challenges to your teaching, to your research, your service, your publications. So again, it's really this totality of documenting for yourself how you responded, but also perhaps some things that may have been delayed. And then this is on the website, and these are elements from the website.
Frances?
Yes.
Can I add just one comment about that as well,
Yes.
about why, especially as people are considering whether
Yes.
or not to submit one this year, that it may not be impactful for this cycle as well. There are many people who are coming up who have had things in the pipeline that were able to come to fruition, but the pipeline might have dried up during COVID. So it also helps to serve for historical documentation and to set the stage for future advancement, where this one may not have been so impactful. So even if you decide not to use it, it's still helpful to write it so that you have it all there and you have it to refer to and to draw on in case the effects are longer impactful than you could have thought.
That's fantastic. I will add that as well to this document in this presentation. Thank you so much, Cindy. So what should be included? And so this is all actually from the APS website, but again, we pulled it out for the screen, and that is it should describe your workload, your performance and trajectory prior to COVID-19. It should describe the impact that COVID has had on your workload and professional opportunity, resulting from the impact on productivity, performance, for example, your areas of specialization, so how your research, your creative activity, your teaching, advising service, there's all of these different areas that could have been impacted. So really, we're doing this session now so that you start to think about those elements and you can reflect back, perhaps, during one of the holiday break, just take the time to take stock and reflect back on how COVID has and continues to impact your life and your professional life. It should describe how you adjusted or your plans to adjust your work in light of COVID's professional impact to continue to rebuild your trajectory. And it may detail different kinds of professional impact on work, negative or positive. So again, these very specific ways. Your professional associations, for example, conferences may have been canceled, presentations may have been canceled, or look different. And so noting that is important. And then this is the what not to include. And I'm hoping, Cindy, you tell us where to find it. I think it's really helpful that folks look at this. And this is, I might actually have you speak on this, Cindy. But if you've had a leave or modification of duties, such as ASMD, you may choose not to include this information. And you want to just provide that timing and duration of the leave that a modification existed. But what's also noted that's important, and I'll stop in a second, Cindy, is that you should also do your best to provide, to avoid providing any information that's personal in nature. And this was, we've gone back and forth on this, but thinking about your personal dependents and private information, that it's recommended we avoid that. Cindy, you want to comment on this?
Yeah, we're trying to solve a couple issues here with this advice, and it's to protect the writer, to the faculty member, the candidate, and to allow you to discuss the impact but maintain your privacy this way. It's also so that we don't introduce potential bias. People have them knowingly or unknowingly, purposeful, intentfully or not, but they do have biases. And so we want to be able to discuss that and recognize that there were issues, there were scheduling constraints, there were health issues, there were personal, emotional impacts, but you can say that without giving the detail. And that's what this is trying to make clear, that an attestation that you had a personal circumstances is all that you need to say, and then describe what you did to overcome it or how you fit your work within that context, but you don't need to give that detail.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really helpful. So again, there is a section on the website of what not to include that I pulled out here, but I really would love for Cindy to, we'll show it. She's going to show us where it is on the website. And then possible elements to include in the COVID impact statement. Again, this website's intended to provide guidance for our faculty, guidance as you think about writing that statement. And so, thinking about broad examples, the amount, patterns, and performance in terms of workload, responsibilities, accomplishments, prospects for development and innovation, timing and availability of opportunity, right? That journal example that I gave, book presses, for example, have slowed down a bit, or your book may have been delayed, for example. And so thinking about really the totality of your experience is going to be really important, and how professional outcomes have been impacted. And then again, this is, I also wanted to know, we are going to provide this afterwards, and it's also going to be on our website, but there's there's a couple of good resources I wanted to note. And one of them is how to write a COVID impact statement in an hour, which we all know we can save time. And then of course, access to our APS website, but there's a few more resources we're going to include when we post this as well. And I'm going to turn it over to Cindy because she actually wanted to pull up the website for you all.
Okay, I'm sharing screen now, and I will show you where all of the information that Francis just presented lives on the website. But I want to talk about this page just real generally first. This page was actually developed very, very recently, and simply because we realized that most of the content on our website was geared towards department chairs and other administrators and staff on how to process and build personnel review files, but there weren't a lot of resources for faculty if they wanted to know how to build a file and what to include and what not to include. So I mention this because it's a work in progress. We're always open to feedback. So as you peruse this, and I encourage you to do it, and I encourage you to share it with your friends and colleagues as well, please feel free to send us any suggestions for revisions or inclusions. We hope to build this and make this a important place that faculty can go to look to see if they have questions about a merit or a promotion or any type of even development, professional development and administrative potential opportunities. And this is where it lives. There's a faculty resource page. All of this other stuff has been here before, but this in particular is the faculty development and academic advancement section. And when you go down here, you'll see that there's a number of other things besides those that are related to COVID. So we've added some basics. What does it mean to advance at UCSD? There's some guidance that CAP has provided. We update this annually. There are guidance for self-statements. That's just for your everyday, normal, regular self-statement. And I add that the COVID impact statement is not in lieu of your self-statement. So you can do two. You can actually do three. People don't know about this as well, but if you write a self-statement, if you're coming up for a career review, for example, and you're sending a self-statement to your extramural evaluators, we encourage you to write a separate one where you get to use all your jargon and all your discipline-specific language that your evaluators would understand. And then you can write a second one that's more general and layman knowledge, or words and a format so that CAP and other reviewers outside of your discipline can understand. And now you can even add the third COVID impact statement to that. And again, these are all intended to allow faculty to tell your story. We call these cases because it's like presenting a case, and you want to tell your story and present all the material that you have so that everybody understands the work that you've done. So this is where the report of the Senate Administration Work Group, this is where the material that Francis presented lives. That starts with an overview. This is just an overview of the page and the report itself, and there is a link here. So if you're interested in looking at the report and reading it, then I encourage you to do that. That gives you the great detail that the work group provided about their recommendations. We're also adding to this page, there's been a system-wide equivalent of this group, and we'll add their report as well. And we're working to reconcile the recommendations made from that system-wide work group to see if there were any gaps in what we've implemented and what we presented at the campus level as well. And if there's programs or opportunities that we missed, then we intend to present these to the EVC as additions and other options that we can offer faculty. And then within this, every of the 10 recommendations by the work group are represented here. Some in great detail, and some, again, are still works in progress. The concept of achievement relative to opportunity, for example. We have distributed a call to department chairs to ask them to provide resources and links if they can, so we can build this section here so that we have more discipline-specific references and resources so that faculty can use it to assist them in writing your COVID impact statement, for example. We also want departments to use this when they're writing their departmental COVID impact statement, and then to just socialize the concept of what achievement relative to opportunity means. And again, that's going to be different for someone in the performing arts, for example, than it might be in chemistry, than it might be in mechanical engineering. So it is important to us to have that discipline-specific material. If you have any yourself, please send it. We're open, we're building this. The more resources that we can provide, the better. The second recommendation is the departmental COVID impact statement, and I can add that we've received 3 that we're building in now. We've received mostly from physical sciences, but I know departments are working on these, and there'll be an added drawer here so that those departmental COVID impact statements are public. Again, I encourage faculty to reference these when you're building your own, so you can kind of see how your departmental statement is setting the stage for discipline-specific impacts, and then you can fine-tune it more for your very specific sub-discipline potentially and your work. Again, there will be a separate drawer here for those examples. We're going to call it a trove of exemplars or something for those departmental specific ones. What Francis talked about is here. This is the COVID impact and adaptability statement. These are instructions. It tells you what it is. And we've broken it up in two different sections. The top part is for candidates, and this is to provide guidance to the candidate on how to write your COVID impact statement. And then the second section is for reviewers, and this is intended to guide reviewers in how to evaluate a COVID impact statement. We are also refining this so that it is applicable to recruitments. And there'll be a version on this for candidates who are vying for positions, and that's going to live on the recruitment page, but there will be a version of this there as well. This in particular, we drew from a number of sources when we developed this, but I welcome feedback. If you think that we missed something or got it wrong or can add to it and augment it, then please send your feedback as well. This is also a section that is intended to help you as you draft yours, and these are the FAQs that Francis talked about. What is the statement? What is the purpose? What should I include? What I should not include? What's going to happen to the statement? We're still working on this part of here, what might a COVID impact statement look like, and are considering developing a template or a form perhaps that people can use if they're struggling. They're struggling in particular with how to include information that is personal without divulging those details. If we can get to that, which we're planning on, then we will make sure that we distribute it broadly so people have access to it. We've had some people who prefer to have it more open-ended and personal, and they want to draft it the way they want it to look, but others are requesting a form. So we're not going to mandate anything. It'll just be another choice. I also want to add that the COVID impact statement isn't time limited. So it's not for this review only. We have every understanding that this is going to be impactful for a number of years. And so if you choose not to write a COVID impact statement this year, that doesn't mean that you won't get to include one in your next review. Especially as we talked about earlier, if your work was not impacted this time, but that trajectory that was impacted is going to be more, it's going to impact or affect your future reviews more. So these COVID impact statements we're expecting to be around for a really long time. Other questions that we're receiving, we're adding as they go. For example, people have asked that are they allowed to do one if they've received other accommodations, if they had a CCMD accommodation, or if they had to stop the clock, does that prohibit them from including a COVID impact statement? And it does not. The COVID impact statement, again, is intended to tell your story, and that story is going to look different for everyone, regardless of other accommodations that someone may or may not have received. The rest of these recommendations are not related so much to the COVID impact statement, but just other measures that were put in place to try to mitigate the impacts of COVID, such as the flexibility to the cutoff date. Francis, do you want me to go into all of these or just, okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful just to go into a few, the recommendations from that.
Okay. Yeah, so the flexibility of the October 15th cutoff date and extension clocks and the one-time advancement offset, these are intended to, again, really reinforce the concept of achievement relative to opportunity. And what this, where did that go? The flexibility to the cutoff date is that rather than have a preliminary negative decision cap, or we will allow candidates to update their files for career reviews longer or beyond that October 15th cutoff date. And this is in recognition of things that might have slowed down, something that potentially would have been included in a review file before October 15th, but because of COVID, a press was slower or an outcome of a publication was slower, that we want to extend that allowance date rather than go straight to the preliminary negative. Clock extension opportunities, again, we are extending that. So these are by request. We did it automatically for the first year, and it ended at 6/30/2020. But anybody who was appointed now beyond that can request an extension of their probationary period. Revision of solicitation letters. This unfortunately came too late. and we were not able to implement that equitably across the campus. So this will be for future reviews. We'll hope to have some language in there for next year's solicitation letters, but we did instead add some recruitment language for recruitments that allows the COVID impact statement here. Streamline normal merits. This has been in place for a number of years, but we are encouraging departments to utilize that who have not used it before. We've actually had 3 departments join the short form for the merit process, so that, again, it's not a relaxation of standards, it's just trying to simplify the process. The one-time advancement offset is huge. This is in recognition, again, of the trajectory that might have come to a screeching halt or died, and somebody who was otherwise posed for examine or poised for advancement, something happened because of COVID, and so that stopped. And rather than go negative or to give a bonus off scale, the one-time advancement offset is that you get the bonus off scale plus the advancement, so it equals a merit. Again, this is recognizing that somebody who would have been meritorious anyway, but because of something that happened during COVID, that number, that quantity might not look the same. So we're giving that offset up front. Does anybody have any questions on this? Because this is the recommendation that we received the most questions on during presentations to department chairs and others. No, if you do, there's also detail here that explains. We modeled this after several other campuses. Berkeley in particular is doing this, but we're not the only ones that are recognizing that there is a need to offset. We don't want faculty to fall behind and not get a merit and get this bonus that's just for one merit cycle. So this is our attempt to keep people whole. These are other programs that we are extending. CCMD extension, we are allowing, we actually requested that we have an expansion of that, but we were denied by Office of President, but for our expansion, but they did allow us to continue the program for another year. So that's COVID Care Modified Duties. This is if you need to have some type of teaching adjustment or service adjustment because of caregiving duties, you can submit that as well. Dependent Care Travel Grant Program, we just announced yesterday, I believe, or today. If not yesterday, then it's going out today. And this is allowing additional $600 grant in case you have a conference or a teaching assignment that is remote, but you need to bring somebody in to help care for your children or an elderly person that you have caregiving responsibilities for, that you can use this to offset those costs. It's not limited to travel, the actual airplane and hotel. It can be to offset costs that result from something that's going to be conducted remotely. And then bridge funding program, we're still working on that. We're trying to get some augmentation to research grants, but this is with the Senate right now. And then finally is some best practices in teaching. And this is in coordination with the Teaching and Learning Commons. This is one that I'm not super familiar with, but I would encourage you to use the link and go to the Teaching and Learning Commons and avail yourselves of all the resources that they've provided. Okay, that's the website.
Thank you, Cindy. That was really helpful. And I guess we should have provided context that since last winter of 2021, the Senate Academic Work Group, which Cindy was part of, myself, a number of faculty and institutional leaders were part of, helped to develop these recommendations. And at one point, our subcommittees were working weekly and meeting weekly, but this was a very intense academic Senate work group to survey the response of COVID on the impact of COVID on faculty, on productivity, on merit and promotion. And so it really was a comprehensive approach that this Senate work group took to developing these recommendations. So just wanted to provide that context. And it's wonderful to see how it's come out in terms of, your outreach and describing those recommendations on the AP website.
So Bonnie has a question about the half step offset or the bonus offset. The reason that we came up with that as an option is so that faculty didn't have to delay. Once you delay, it's really hard to recover from that. And especially if pre-COVID, the trajectory was looking like everything was on track for a normal advancement. It's kind of I don't want to say that it's less, but it might be. Again, it's achievement relative to opportunity. So if the opportunity for an additional publication didn't exist because of whatever reason, then, but you achieved, less than that, or what would have been, you would have achieved that additional publication had it not been for COVID. That's achievement relative to opportunity. And then that's when the offset comes in place, if that makes sense. So it could be less than if the reason that it's less than is because that opportunity dried up because of COVID, not because of some other reason, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question, Bonnie?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, we really don't want our faculty to have to defer unnecessarily.
We'll open it up now to questions, additional questions, either in the chat or you can unmute yourself. We're a small enough group that we can, engage, of course, with any questions the group has. Okay, if there are no additional questions, I just wanted to thank Robin and Mardestiny, of course, with the Center for Faculty Diversity and Inclusion for helping to coordinate and set up this event. As you can see, just one important point is that this is a work in progress. And so as you go through the APS website, it's really, really helpful to give that feedback to Cindy and her team. I think it's an excellent resource for our faculty. So thank you, Cindy, to your team. Thank you for taking the time this morning in describing everything you've laid out for the faculty as they work to develop these COVID impact statements. We really appreciate your time and sharing that expertise this morning.
Yeah, and we're really looking for more resources as well. So if you have research that you think would be important to share on the website, please send it over our way. Again, we are building more drawers here so we can add those departmental impact statements. If your department hasn't written one yet, or you haven't seen one yet and you're coming up for review this year, please encourage your department to do that, and then they can send it our way and we can put it up here as an example and a reference point. Or if you think that your chairs need motivation to do that, I'm happy to reach out to chairs to encourage them and remind them to do that as well. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, everyone, for attending this morning. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we will be posting this on the Center for Faculty Diversity and Inclusion, our website, as well as the slides from today. So thank you very much for attending our session. Thank you.
Thank you.